we are moving into a realm or to an era where you have to be a global talent, right? You have to be a global talent. I mean, the coming of the internet and all those things would mean that your services could be required elsewhere or at a different part of the world. And you should be able to do that. Don't limit your scope to just working in, okay, so I'm Ghanaian, so I'm thinking of Ghana. You think globally. And I cannot stress on this enough. And it's not expensive to do that. There are so many resources. I don't see why an accountant in Ghana and maybe, I mean, with the exception of some of these, they are professional certifications, but I don't see why an accountant in Ghana should not aspire to work remotely for a company in maybe, let's say, New Zealand, right? Because the internet has breached a lot of these things, a lot of these gaps. So once you're a talent, or once you're a professional, or once you're an African, anytime you think about doing something, you should be thinking of yourself as a global talent. If it's language that you need to take, a second language that you need to take that language. If it's professional certification that you need to take, you need to take that. But whatever you do, make sure that the talent that you have, the profession that you have, you are building yourself into a talent that can, I mean, easily jump from one country to the other, or even take on other jobs and be able to do within your country.
Welcome once again to the life of the AfroPro. On this show, I interview young African professionals who have risked it all to make a meaningful life for themselves, their families, society, and the continent at large. Today, I'm privileged to have with me Ni Anakwe Abe. Ni is a business journalist based in New York, and he has a beautiful story to share. In the next few minutes, Ni is going to share his transition from Ghana to New York. And I believe by the end of this video, you're going to learn a whole lot of stuff from it. If you are new to this channel, kindly subscribe, share. You may never know how this will go a long way to help a friend, family member. My name is Kofi Boachi. Thank you. Ni, you are welcome to the show.
All right, thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you too for your time. I know it was a short notice, but you made time for us. I'm so excited to have you here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
All right. So if you are ready, we'll go straight into the conversation. First, I will start off with a little bit about your background, and then you tell us some little story too about your career journey.
So about me, I worked as a business journalist in Ghana for close to a decade.
Okay.
And what brought me to New York was I came here for grad school. I mean, after working so hard and for so long in Ghana, I felt like I needed a change of environment. So I was looking at other opportunities, and I did not just want to move for moving sake. I was just looking at where or what I would study that would add value to what I already know. And so in my search and in my quest, I found data journalism at Columbia Journalism School. And of course, I mean, data journalism is something I've always been wanting to study. And then also Columbia Journalism School is one of the best journalism schools in the world. So I decided to take my chances and see if I would make it. So lo and behold, and by the grace of God and through my hard work as well, I got into Columbia Journalism School sometime in 2021. So admission was announced May 2021, and I started school August 2021 as well. And it was a 1 year full-time program. And when I was done, I transitioned into a full-time role with one of the leading business news organizations in the world. And I've been there since 2022, right after school till now. So yeah, we're still going strong.
Okay. All right. So, I want to take you a little bit back. Before you came to Columbia University, can you tell us a little bit about your educational background in Ghana?
Okay, so I was at Ghana Institute of Journalism somewhere
Mm.
between 2006 and 2010. And I did BA or Bachelor's of Arts in Communication Studies. I
Okay.
majored in journalism. I also went back to GIJ, that's the Ghana Institute of Journalism, once again
Mm.
for my master's because I felt like having been home and working so hard, I needed to just go back to school to just, exercise my brain capacity. So I went back for my first master's, which was MA in development communication, because I also like the fact that sometimes a lot of our development is determined by how communication policies and projects are implemented. So I just felt like as a journalist, I also needed to understand the process and the nuances involved in that. So that's pushed me to MA in development communications. That was sometime in 2015, 2016.
Okay.
And basically that's all that I've been up to. And but in between that period and bachelor's and all that, I've been doing a lot of short courses here and there, training workshops
Oh,
from South Africa to Ethiopia to Kenya and all those things. And I feel like all of that also contributed or kind of like shaped me or
okay.
shaped my perspective into becoming what I'm now able to do. So yes, that's what I would say.
Okay. All right. Okay. So when you came to Columbia University, then after that you went into your journalism field. How were you able to integrate into the system?
So I would say that my experience helped a lot, but of course, nothing prepares you for the kind of stress and rigor that is required of studying at Columbia. And I don't say this because I don't say this lightly. Anybody who knows a product from Columbia Journalism would sell you the same story I'm telling you. It's an intensive program that would stretch you beyond your wildest I mean anything that you could ever think of. And so I thought I was prepared because I was very experienced. I had worked so hard. I have done work that would take me overnight, and I've done all sorts of work that I felt like would prepare me for the rigor of Colombia. But uh, I mean, alas, I was wrong. I think it helped, but the intensity of the program was something that you will still feel it, no matter how prepared you think you are. You will still feel it. You will still be stretched. And there'll be times that you will feel like, oh, you made a wrong decision to come here. Why would you want to subject yourself to so much pressure and all that? So I think that I felt like it was draining. But then at the back of my mind, I never lost focus. I never lost track of what brought me here because I had this philosophy that once I have started, then it means I would finish. And then also that, everyone that has gone through the process,
Mhm.
no one that has gone through the process is better than I am. So once I am here, I would have to finish whatever it would take. So with that said, quitting wasn't
An
an
option.
option. It wasn't an option, even if I'm looking at 100 options, it wasn't an option that would even cross my mind. So I think having that kind of mindset also helped push me, um, like hold my hand and guide me all throughout. But it wasn't an easy adjustment to make, especially with all the different cultures, with all the different um, I mean, studying in Ghana and studying here are kind
Mhm.
of like two different things. How the teaching mechanisms and all those are that two separate things. I won't say one is better than the other, but just that the change of environment and the
Yeah.
methods of teaching and everything,
Mhm.
are things that it will take a while for you to get used to.
Okay, so speaking of cultural differences and all that, what would you say is your biggest lesson that you've learned through all this, your career journey from Ghana and your educational background from Ghana and the one that you got from here? What are some of the key lessons you've learned through it all?
I think you need to trust in your capabilities, right? Um, for starters, whatever opportunity you would get is something you rightly deserve,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So if you get an opportunity to do something, do not think less of yourself. You got opportunity because someone somewhere thought you were qualified,
Yeah.
right? Forget about all the self-doubt and all those things, whether you are an imposter or whether it's an imposter syndrome you're having and all that. Just deliver, just keep doing what you're doing and even try to be better at it. So I think for me, that's the greatest lesson.
Mhm.
People, most of the time, we tend to be overly critical of ourselves. We tend to kind of look up on ourselves and we judge our capabilities based on what we've seen others do, based on what we see others talk about. But
Yeah.
trust me, if we trust in our abilities, we are equally capable and competent, just like anybody else. If
Mhm.
you don't get in, then it's a problem. But once you get in, once somebody gives you that vote of confidence, just do what you're supposed to do and even try to improve on it. And you will be fine.
Okay. All right. So, can you share any unique experience that you've gone through where your cultural background became some form of a resilient factor?
Um, I think there's been a lot. I don't know whether to talk about my experience in school or my experience.
Oh, you can share both, whether through school or your your workplace, where you think that had it not been that you had a resilient cultural background, you wouldn't have been able to go through that kind of experience.
Okay, so I would say that the thing about schooling here is that it's like I said, it's very intense and I don't know whether this part of the culture is something I would say is good or negative, but
Mhm.
I would say broadly my experience in Ghana, some of the things I went through, some of them I won't encourage anybody to go through now, but I
Okay.
think some way somehow some of them proved very useful.
Okay.
And yes, much as I don't encourage people to go through, so I come from an environment back in the day where um we're doing, the school shift system where people were going in the morning, people were going in the afternoon and all
Mhm.
that. So there's so much resilience. So sometimes you would have to, I mean, show, I don't know, you have to work hard because you know where you're coming from. And when you get into an environment which is very, very competitive, you always have to know that, I mean, this is something that you I don't want to say you come from fear like you're from far away, but it's something that you need to show working, as we say in the local parlance, you need to show working just to be able to prove to people that you are also there on merit and not because somebody handpicked you
Mhm.
due to anything. So I mean there's been so many of such experiences and some palatable, some unpalatable. But then I think that the resilience that mean, you are taught growing up from a home where I mean, you're not privileged to have everything on the silver platter.
Mhm.
Whatever opportunity that is given to you, you try to make the most out of it. You try to let people know that you can handle more
Okay.
and are equally capable. Yeah, so that's what I would say.
Okay. All right. So, we live in an era that a lot of young Africans are migrating for greener pastures, and some too are migrating to build their capacities. I just want to find out, how do you envision the influence of African professionals back home in their various countries? What kind of influence can these African professionals have on lives back home?
Well, I think that for anybody that plans on moving out or migrating, first of all, you should work on your capacity even back home. Because I mean, if you don't leave a mark back home before you leave, it becomes very difficult for you to reconnect when you go back. So I think that that's one of the most important things I would say. You should have some sort of legacy that you can call upon when you go back home.
Okay.
So but people generally would want to associate with people they can relate with, right? Other than that, you leave and you come back, it's like you're parachuting. And why should people give you that kind of space, or why should they trust you when you've not been through the system, right? You need to be able to know and understand, experience the system if you have any desire of changing it or impacting or influencing it. Other
Mhm,
than that, I mean, you come back and it's all about what you've read or what you've been told. You have no experience, and it becomes difficult. I'm not saying it's impossible, but
mhm.
it's always when you are part of a system, when you understand the system, the process, and the flows, and all that. When you want to change it, then it becomes easy for you to be able to change it. So, in terms of what I envision, I think that the professionals here have access to wide range of or like I mean to get access to perspectives that probably will not be available if you stay in stay and work in Ghana. And I'm not saying that's encouraged, but I'm just saying that once you work with like different cultures, different nationalities, there's something that you tend to learn. And it's always useful that sometimes when you go back, you're able to apply some of these perspectives because I mean it's a global village, as we say, it's a global village, and we are not as a country, we don't live in isolation. We are part of a system that is evolving. So if you want to come to the table, I mean, you would also need players or people who understand this system. So if you have people like that elsewhere and they are expressing their desire to come back and help, I mean, why not? I mean, it shouldn't necessarily be that these people come back because people think of them as the better of the people between somebody who's decided to be in Ghana and someone who's decided. You need to have that blend, right? You need to have that blend just to make whatever development agenda you have achievable.
Okay. Okay. So my next question will be, what message do you think African youths needs to hear right now?
Well, I think the message, one thing I would say is that we are moving into a realm or to an era where you have to be a global talent, right? You have to be a global talent. I mean, the coming of the internet and all those things would mean that your services could be required elsewhere or at a different part of the world. And you should be able to do that. Don't limit your scope to just working in, okay, so I'm Ghanaian, so I'm thinking of Ghana. You think globally. And I cannot stress on this enough. And it's not expensive to do that. There are so many resources. I don't see why an accountant in Ghana and maybe, I mean, with the exception of some of these, they are professional certifications. But I don't see why an accountant in Ghana should not aspire to work remotely for a company in maybe, let's say, New Zealand,
Mhm.
right? Because the internet has bridged a lot of these things, a lot of these gaps. So once you're a talent, or once you're a professional, or once you're an African, anytime you think about doing something, you should be thinking of yourself as a global talent. If
Okay.
it's language that you need to take, a second language that you need to take that language. If it's professional certification that you need to take that. But whatever you do, make sure that the talent that you have, the profession that you are building yourself into a talent that can, I mean, easily jump from one country to the other, or even take on other jobs and be able to do within your country.
Okay. All right. My next question will be, what kind of advice would you give your 18-year-old self if you can turn the clock of life back?
Well, I'll say that first of all, be yourself and don't think too far out. I think that sometimes what hurts us is trying to look at the bigger picture, like 20 years from now, 15 years from now. I mean, it's good to always have a bigger picture in mind, but sometimes it's easy for you to break some of these things down into small, like tiny bits of very useful activity that are easily achievable,
Mhm.
right? Because once you do that, you are able to live a more meaningful life
Okay.
and not focus too much on the abstract. 20 years from now, you don't know what technology would happen,
Mhm.
whether AI is going to take over the world, whether robots are going to rule. And yes, 20 years from now will still happen anyway. Yes, yes. But what you can do now, let's say, okay, so between now and the end of the year, I want to read let's say 20 books, right? To be more realistic, I want to read 20 books. Okay, so out of the 20 books, how many can I read in a week? How many can I do this? What kind of books can I read? So you have all these things, and then bit by bit, you are doing it incrementally. And at the end of the day, you would achieve so much. But if you have a bigger picture, which is useful,
Mhm.
sometimes the thought of it would even scare you, and sometimes makes it complacent. So 20 years there, I have more time. 20 years, I mean, I can, if I don't start today, I can start tomorrow. You know, that kind of thing. But when you break it down into like daily task, daily this, daily that, and you're looking at that, it's always very, very helpful.
Okay. All right. So, finally, I'll ask this one. What are some of the key things that you think you've learned here in your line of work that we can actually implement or we can also inculcate in our system as Africans as we seek to develop?
I think first and foremost, one of the things I would say is honesty. We need to be honest with ourselves as people, as leadership, whether it's in the newsroom or it's in the country. We need to be forthright with people.
Mhm.
And I think that if you have leadership which is honest with people or forthright with people, be able to know their capabilities and their limitations,
Okay.
right? And you do that and you don't take people for granted. A lot of the time, talents that have gone wasted in Africa, I don't have any statistics to back that. But then in my experience and the anecdote I've seen, when you have leadership, which is not honest with people, you lead them astray. And if you work with a leader that is not always telling you what needs to be told, treats you right the way you have to be treated, your work ethics, the work ethics or the culture that you develop over time will deteriorate.
Okay.
And you would only realize when you move to another place to work or you change environment.
Okay.
Then you realize that there's some bit of it that you were supposed to, something that you should have been doing,
Mhm.
but because the leadership wasn't honest with you and we're not treating you right, we're not paying you and all those things, you
Mhm.
develop very poor work ethics. And once some of these things are developed, they're very hard to change. So I think that that's one thing I would say it's important. You hear so many layoffs here and all that, mainly
Mhm.
because people are unable to, when they look at the business and they think that the business cannot continue to operate as a going concern, they will just lay off people. Not because they want people to lose their jobs, but they are telling you that look, I cannot pay you. The work you're doing, I cannot pay you beyond this month. So better I let you go. So you go and find a place elsewhere. But
Mhm.
you find out that in Ghanaian um, workplaces or Ghanaian organizations, sometimes, especially and I'm speaking because I'm a journalist and my experience is more limited to media organizations. People work and they're not paid. And you see, once you're not paid, your boss is also not telling you why you're not being paid, and you're
Mhm.
encouraged to work with time you be forced to cut corners, and then if you do it for a long time, it become part of you. But that might not necessarily be the right thing to do, right? So once you move on to another place, you think that what you've been doing for a long time is the right thing, or it's something that you've done so many times that you cannot stop. And all of these things will rise and fall with leadership. If they are able to tell you that, okay, so I employed you to do A, B, C, D, and because of business A, B, C, D, I cannot no longer pay you. So take this money and go home. People would report to another workplace with a different mindset. They will not learn how to cut corners, right? So that would not affect you in the long run. And I think that that's one thing that I've learned here. People are very forthright with you. If they will pay you, they will pay you. If they cannot and they think that the business is not in the process of is in the right shape, they let you go. It's
Okay.
painful, but it has to be done. Everybody knows where they go from there.
Mhm. Okay. So finally, I will say if there's anything that you wanted to put across that perhaps maybe I did not ask, you have the next minute to do that.
Well, I would say that normally when we talk about conversations regarding migration and all that, people think it's an easy thing to do, but it's not. I mean, forget about all the glam and all There's the beautiful pictures of or beautiful stories that you will hear on so or you read on social media. The process works differently for everyone, right? So be very, very sure of what you're doing. And a lot of the time, when you talk about migration like this, people would go like, "Oh, so if it's not working out for you, why don't you come back?" But you
Mhm.
see, it's it's difficult for most people because they leave everything that they have,
Mhm.
like they start afresh, they come and start afresh, and then coming back is always a problem. So a
Yeah.
lot of people will try to talk you out of it. I'm not going to talk anybody out of it. I think it's an experience everybody rightly deserves. But in coming to that conclusion, make sure that you know what you're doing. Don't jump before you look. Look before you jump, because otherwise you would jump before you look. And when you get here and you're also telling people, they will tell you the same thing that you tell them when they
Yeah.
told you not to come. Do you get it? So make sure you know what you're doing. And for what it is worth, if you have a very, very, very good career going on for you, I don't think that if you've spent, let's say, 5, 10, 8 years to build a career, I don't think it makes sense to move and start all over when the opportunity is not right. I mean, I am kind of privileged, and if everybody takes my route of coming to school and working here and doing all that, I would say it's something which is very, very much the right way to do. But beyond that, to come here and like quote unquote hustle because you think there's some beautiful life to be made out here, it would be very tough for you. It would be very, very tough for you. So just look before you jump. Make sure you know what you're doing and
Okay.
make sure that you have a backup plan. And if maybe push comes to shove, you can go back if you want to.
Okay. Thank you very much, Nee, for your insights and the experience that you've shared with our audience. I believe our audience have learned a lot from this conversation. Thank you very much for your time.
You're welcome.
Thanks so much for your time with us. It has been an exciting moment. I know you've learned a lot from this video. Until we meet again, stay positive, keep your heads up, and you surely get to your destination. Thank you.